make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
The State College Spikes are back home for a big weekend series against Williamsport, August 19th through the 21st. Friday the 19th, game time at 6:35 p.m. for Heroes Night on a 4 for 44 Friday. Saturday the 20th, the skies light up as you can see fireworks from the field, presented by College Township after the 6:35 p.m. game on Space Night. And Sunday the 21st, it's Witches and Wizards Night on a Sunday fun day with a 4:05 start. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, 3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And remember, tell them Johnny sent you.
We welcome you into yet another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show on a Thursday afternoon.
We're all getting paid.
We're
all getting paid.
Let the money flow.
Gold-plated toilets at the Lash Building. Here we come.
Well, there are a few different angles I want to get into, and I'm sure both of you have issues within this that you want to weigh in on, but it is certainly astounding money. If you did not see, there's a new TV agreement for the Big Ten Conference, and it is kind of backloaded, but it will average over $1 billion a year for the conference. And there's all kinds of additional monies that could be coming in if the ratings are what most are expecting. And projecting them to be, so that it could end up being a good bit more even than the kind of eye-dropping figures that are there. Yes. At the end of the day. Well, let's just start there. The money itself, right, it does speak to the power of television still, and I know there are those that believe that the power of television is going to continue to disintegrate over time because of all of the streaming options and stuff that are out there. I think this is telling you that at least the TV industry does not believe that's the case at all. And the thing is, when you look at it, because one of the vehicles here for the networks is Peacock, right? And so that, and you're seeing more and more of that, where the networks are providing the streaming entities, and obviously are controlling that. And because they already have the in with all of these big leagues, right? I mean, it's very difficult for any of the other streaming services to muscle in. And so the power of the TV industry, again, I think is going to remain strong. What is interesting to me is that because this is all, at the end of the day, ad revenue generated. I mean, the TV folks are making their money back, or so they believe, and always have, yes, with the ads that they then go out
and subscriptions
and sell. Well, and yes, in some cases now, and yes, obviously with the cable companies and all of that. But I mean, it's largely ad revenue that is going to generate this money, which tells you that there is a whole lot of interest in the Big Ten. It also tells you, and I think Kevin Warren even confirmed in I didn't read through the entire statement, but I think he said in there that, or at least somebody when they were talking about this, I think it was said, obviously we are not done expanding. Part of this, and the reason it is backloaded, is they are banking on a bigger footprint still than the pretty much coast-to-coast footprint that the Big Ten currently has.
Aren't you glad, by the way, to be among the hunters and not the hunted?
Well,
like if you're in the Pac-12 or you're the Big 12 right now, you're like one of those, like on the Serengeti, right? Like you're a caribou or something, and you're just scanning
there's a salt
around.
lick over there. You're a deer. I was like, wow, that looks pretty good. I'm going to try that out.
Yeah.
So before we get off the topic here, Ironhead, you touched on it. That's my biggest question. And then we could talk about this, the three of us. Do you think this is the last big TV blast money because of people pulling the cable wire, going to streaming services? Do you think that this is the last of the big paydays? Or, because the numbers is astounding, and then TV knows better than us. I mean, I pay a $200 cable bill a month. I don't know what you pay, but you're paying for NBC, CBS, ESPN. I mean, we're paying for that type of stuff, so we are streaming already. But do you think that this will in 8 years, the next contract will be just as big or bigger, or will the bubble have burst by then?
No, I think it'll be just as big or bigger for a couple of reasons. And listen, I obviously could be wrong on that, but I think you're going to start to see, and it's still one of my. And I'm a little bit torn on it. It's one of my concerns, but at the same time, I think at the end of the day, it may be the best thing to get most sports back in perspective. One of my takeaways from this, actually, before I go to that, the reason I think it's going to continue to get bigger is because I think we're going to have expanded playoffs, and I think that's going to happen before the next TV deal occurs. I think that's right around the corner. I don't know whether we're talking about an expansion to 6, 8, 12, but I think within 10 years, my guess is you're going to have at least 8, and I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how this thing evolves, if you get to 16,
it could be.
With shorter schedules.
I hope not.
During the season. Yeah, but I think, I think one of the possibilities is, and I think there are a ton of possibilities here, but I think one of the possibilities is that you end up with either 2 or 4 so-called super conferences, and, you end up with, let's just work with the even round number that it won't be of 100, but about 100 quote-unquote big-time college football programs. They're all in. They're going to compete at the highest level. Some will be on the Cleveland Browns end of the spectrum. Some will be on the New England Patriots end of the spectrum, but they're all going to be in that same league still. And then I think you're going to have
analogy for today's news, by the way.
Then I think you're going to have another tier of, again, good teams, but they're not going to go the full scholarships. They're not going to draw. And I think it'll be some of the teams, like the max teams, but even some of the teams that are in the Power 5 conferences now, I think will end up shifting over to that. And I'm not making predictions right now on who those teams will be. And then you'll have what we have now with the Division 2 and 3 schools as well. But so I think the money there for football and for basketball is going to continue to skyrocket. What I am really curious to see, because it is a whole lot of money no matter how you look at it, right? Divided up in the Big Ten. But here's the thing. When you are dividing it up among SEC schools, okay, if they get a similar contract when the next one comes up, each school is dividing that in the SEC between like 18 to 22 varsity sports programs. Penn State and a lot of the Big Ten schools are dividing it among 30 plus at the moment. What I'm wondering is how long that continues to be divided up with the money that is now going to be out there and necessary for football and basketball
our
players.
Phone call this week today, I mean.
Were you
tapped into that? I mean,
I expected, Ironhead, that would be the perspective you have, because you have obviously from wrestling you have a better understanding about how the finances of all of this works. And I don't know about you guys. I think, and this is not a unique opinion to me. I've heard a lot of folks say it nationally today, that this signals not only is revenue sharing on the horizon, but my guess is that Kevin Warren and the bigwigs in the Big Ten, they already know basically what structure they're going to pursue.
Yeah.
I bet the wheels are turning on that.
Sure.
And so I think that's good. It sounds great, but man, when you start digging into the details of like, how is this going to be negotiated? Is there going to be collective bargaining? Are the players going to have to form a union? How is this going to affect the non-revenue sports?
Yep.
Because here are two things I have a difficult time imagining. The current model we have,
Penn State.
College athletics.
Okay.
Where football and men's basketball, which are the revenue drivers, are basically, they inhabit the same space. They're part of the same classification as all the other Olympic sports on campus. I can't imagine a system governed by Title IX where the revenue sports athletes can make the bulk of the money. I also can't imagine a situation where there's any kind of collective bargaining where the players who are bringing in most of the money say, oh, no, I'm fine with most of it not going to us. So there's going to be a point where the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, and the current model of college athletics is going to have to fundamentally change in some way. That's my thinking.
I agree with you. And what my best guess is at the moment is that, and I think we've at least touched on this before. I think eventually, and I don't know if this is going to be something that happens in the next couple of years or it's over the course of a decade or whatever. But what I'm expecting is that you're going to end up, and again, I could argue that this is good or bad. Overall, it feels bad to me because there's going to be fewer scholarship opportunities, and I think fewer kids getting the opportunity to go to college that might not otherwise have that. Although there are other things that could come into play to make that not necessarily the case. But the athletic scholarships, I don't see any way around the idea that the overall number of scholarships for athletics drops here over the next decade. And my guess is it drops by a good bit. But what I think you're going to have, and again, this is just my guess. Yeah, I think the number of scholarship opportunities will drop substantially over the course of the next decade.
In Olympic sports. So from 9-9 wrestling, I know wrestling is the outlier.
Well, no,
especially here.
Well, here's what I think is, and again, I could be completely wrong. This is just where my mind goes and what I'm expecting to happen. Because, for example, wrestling is big enough at Penn State and is getting darn close to being at least a break-even sport, if not a money maker. Well, there are certain head coaches working darn hard to try to make sure that happens here before his tenure ends.
It's hard, though, man. Like that
it is really hard when you look at when you look at the the scholarships, but then the recruiting money, the travel money. Sure. I mean, and especially now, if you are in a situation where you are trying to do some of the flights are chartered and that stuff like that adds up real quick. So, anyways, but the
why does a university have a plane?
But I think you're going to have 40. And again, I'm making up the number, but I think you'll have 40, again, quote unquote, big time wrestling programs. So I think Penn State will, at the end of the day, look at it. And again, this could be a couple of decades down the road. I don't think so. And I hope it takes a long time and I hope it never happens myself. But I think you're going to see, many schools, most schools, maybe all schools that are Power 5 say, listen, we're not going to have just basketball and football. And listen, they're going to have to offset because of the society we live in and right, wrong, indifferent. That there will be they're going to have women's sports to offset the scholarships that are provided for football and basketball. There's no way around that. So there will be some women's sports and some men's sports. But I think most of these schools are going to go down to like 10 to 15 programs across the board, Big Ten, SEC, that are varsity sports. And I think you're going to have a lot more really good club-level sports. But I think you're going to have like 40 wrestling programs around the country. I mean, Iowa's not going to drop wrestling. I don't think, Penn State, a lot of the Big Ten schools, Oklahoma State, there will be, again, I'm making up the number, but let's say 40 schools. And I think same thing with lacrosse. There are, Maryland isn't going to get rid of lacrosse. At least, I mean, it's going to do everything it can. I'll put it that way to hang on. I guess it would never say never on any of these, but, Connecticut isn't going to drop women's basketball. Tennessee is not going to drop women's basketball. But I think, women's basketball, probably women's volleyball. There's a few women's sports that I think will, again, because of the offset with basketball, men's basketball and football, that will have pretty wide availability and 100 plus programs. But my guess, and again, just one person's guess, but that you'll see gymnastics programs drop, women's gymnastics. Most of these sports will drop down to 40 to 50. And I think the competition within those leagues and the remaining, what we know as D1 programs, is going to be phenomenal. I mean, you're going to get the best of the best. I mean, you see it right now in college wrestling. I think the wrestling is as good as it's ever been, but there's fewer opportunities than there obviously were in the 1980s. And so, but I think they're going to get to the point where, and I think these colleges will still use some of the money that is there to help, just as they did with the hockey program. We've talked about that before it went Division I. It wasn't like the hockey program was just on an island, or the rugby program now, right? I mean, it's a vital part of the Penn State community and a vibrant part of the Penn State community. It's just not a varsity sport. There aren't scholarships being given, but there's still transportation and other costs that are at least defrayed, if not offset, by the university. So it's not that I think the model's just going to change, I suspect. And I think it's going to change fairly dramatically to what many of us have become accustomed and enjoy. And listen, part of it is going to be that the universities are, and you're already seeing at Penn State with the cost of parking for these non-revenue sports. I mean, you've got to be a field hockey diehard, and Penn State has plenty of field hockey diehards, right? But to pay $10 on a Sunday afternoon to go watch a field hockey game is an imposition to people who have been used to paying nothing. And so, I think there are going to be some very hard decisions coming. And again, I hope I'm wrong about all of this. And I know at initial glance, people are going to say, well, what are you talking about? Look at all this money. It's $80, $90 million a year that Penn State is getting. You're telling me they can't divide that up among 31 sports? Yeah, I'm telling you they can do that. What I'm telling you is that Alabama can take less money and give their coaches more money than Penn State because they have fewer programs. And at some point, we talk about you got to keep up with the Joneses. The numbers just don't work as great as they are if you are trying to, again, be at the highest level of competition. And already we've talked about it. There's a lot of other things in play here with the NIL deals now, and you look at what Miami is doing and the money that is flowing to the athletes down there. And there are schools, and I think Penn State, as great as the alumni base is, I think Penn State is one of them. That Penn State is not going to match what Miami is doling out right now. And I don't mean the university, but I mean the players at Miami, what they are receiving. There was I think it was ESPN. Somebody was doing a feature on one of the businessmen down there, and it's causing all kinds of controversy. But he's like, no, I'm paying them to it promotes the.
He's already said he won't do it again.
Is.
He's already on record saying he won't be doing the whole team thing again, where he's going to pick and choose, because this is not, again, like we talked about from it's not sustainable. So I'm going to go back, Ironhead. So let's go back to, I said this a long time ago, and that is that if we want to talk about Title IX and this and that, there is an outlier on there, and it's called the football team. That there's 85 scholarships that need to be making up by women's sports. Just make football different, because you have to have 85 women's scholarships to just match the football program. And the only other program that doesn't have a men's sport is field hockey. And there's not 85 women's scholarships on there. So if you take football as the outlier and get rid of that, I think that changes the whole aspect of your
but it's not happening.
Department.
The courts and the direction the courts are going in this country, that's not getting reversed. I mean, I don't disagree with you,
when
but it's not. But
the
reality is that's not changing. Football would have to get away from the university, which could happen.
The NCAA and football is run on their own thing, which is where we're going.
Yeah,
there will not be that.
But it wouldn't be able to be university sponsored at that point.
Well, the other interesting angle on this, I was listening to Steve Jones's show earlier today on ESPN Radio here in State College, and he had Dennis Dodd from CBS on to talk about this, and they made an interesting point which I had never thought of before, or never heard anyone else bring up. If the revenue sharing were to come via the media money, that is all dispersed through the conference. And if it were managed at the conference level, the Big Ten receives no federal funding. They're a 501c3, but they get no federal money, which means they are not bound by Title IX. So if the Big Ten came in and said, the only reason we can make this money is because of football, so we are choosing to earmark a portion of your distribution for your football players.
Interesting.
That would be one workaround that would also immediately go to court and get tied up for many, many years. I don't think there is any way in hell that they could do that and not immediately have it be challenged, which is why, going back to what you and I were saying, at some point or another, you have to take, at the bare minimum, football, maybe men's basketball too, and that becomes like an affiliate adjunct of the rest of your athletic department somehow.
Yeah. And that may be the way around. It may be, I don't know how you would set it up, but something to the effect of, hey, the football program can use the university facilities if it pays us. And again, I'll make up the number, but $30 million a year.
You can rent
and
Stadium from us.
Right. And then to allow the other programs to sustain themselves. Yeah, and I did not know that though about the Big Ten.
I hadn't thought about it, but it makes sense. Can I be naive just for a moment? Like I understand that
you're pretty good at it.
Thank you. I try. I understand that at the end of the day, the almighty dollar rules things, but I do think there is at least some possibility. Especially, when you listen to people who have kind of emerged as the voice of the players movement.
Yeah.
Both here at Penn State, and you listen to Sean Clifford talk, you listen to some of the other guys, like the players who tried to unionize at Northwestern or whatever, just kind of the mentality of the current generation. I do think there is something to be said for the fact that I'm not sure whoever is going to be leading the bargaining on behalf of the players are going to want to be the reason that every Olympic sport gets eliminated. Like, I don't think they are going to want figuratively speaking, the blood of every women's college sport and a bunch of other men's sports that don't make money on their hands. And I think there are enough people, considering that this is ultimately still being run by university presidents. I mean, Kevin Warren is a very powerful commissioner. He's set himself up very, very effectively to be a powerful executive. He is still answerable to university presidents.
Yep.
I do think there is going to be some sentiment inside the Big Ten that, we want to maintain, maybe there are some changes, but we want to try to maintain our broad-based athletic programs. If you look at UCLA and USC, even some of the other West Coast teams they're talking about bringing in, they share that philosophy with all the Big Ten powers. If the Big Ten is driving this instead of being forced into it by the courts, like has happened to the NCAA with all the changes they've made, and you see how well that's gone with the transfer portal and NIL and everything else, maybe they drive it a little bit and say, look, we've been sustaining this model on the money we were making previously. And as Goon made the point, before we came on today. You said we were getting, 50, 55 million.
53 or $54.6 million average is what Big Ten teams were paid last year.
So essentially, this is like $50 million
so we're getting
of found money.
We're getting a $50 million because that money, the $7 billion that they're talking about, does not include bowl revenue, does not include revenue you're building at your program and your parking and your tickets and your sales and stuff like that. So that doesn't even take into anything. So if Penn State makes it, we work off of a football creates $100 million and then they spend 50. Okay, so now if you take that $100 million away, we got 54 last year. So that's $56 million improvement already off of last year.
You grandfather some of what's
2019 and 2020 was what the last time they did a study. So 2019 and 2020, they got $54.6 million. So you figure they're going to get a $55 million click up. And I'm telling Booch off the air today, and I'm like, let's be smart with this money and like sit there and say, like, okay, if we go to a revenue sharing, okay, you have just on a rough edge, I think we averaged there was like 800 student athletes on this campus, scholarship athletes.
Does that sound about right?
I would say just give it rough numbers. Give it 1,000 student athletes on this campus that are scholarship people.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
And you give football players half of that money, the revenue sharing type of thing, and you take the other half. I mean, basketball should get a little bit more because they are part of this deal. And then there's enough money to go around. It's just like we just don't need to go out and spend it like drunken sailors, like somebody other people who were in charge for a while here at multiple universities, just spending like we had it where we like you have an influx of money of 50 plus $50 million. Let's keep it above that line and not go out and spend it as fast as we can get it.
And maybe you don't stick at 31 sports, but maybe you don't have to drop down to 15.
Yeah.
Maybe you save like 26, 27, somewhere in that area.
Get a fleet of airplanes here too.
And this is
not
talking
about. I mean, why do we not have a plane? I mean, we're talking about this
This is not just our problem either.
No.
Michigan and Ohio State, I think, have at least as many, or Ohio State has more.
Ohio State definitely
has
has more. Yeah.
And Michigan's right up there.
Yeah.
And UCLA is right up there now.
UCLA, USC, yes. Well, it's the SEC. The SEC school too. They know that it was football that makes that butters their bread. They've known that for a long time, and that's their culture down there. Our culture up here is we like women's sports. We really do.
I mean, look, Alabama could give their women's basketball team $5, and nobody would.
And no one would say a thing.
Word.
And if the women's basketball coach said a word, they go. I mean, that's the way it is.
They'd find a new women's basketball coach.
Absolutely, they would. Don't make waves.
Yeah.
Jeff, when we were throwing numbers around, like, and then I go back to what I said a couple weeks ago, and then I'm like, this NIL money, why don't we get to the point where if you're making so much money, okay, so if you have, just say a threshold of like $400,000, and there's guys, how many, like maybe 3% of the guys are probably making that kind of money, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so you hit a threshold of like $400,000, then you know what? You're no longer on scholarship. You got to pay for your own scholarship. Like you're playing in, remember like the college baseball players or football players who like played professional baseball. Kyler Murray, example A. He was the first overall pick by the Oakland A's. He took a $7 million signing bonus. He had to pay to go to play at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you hit a threshold of say $300,000, $500,000, you should pay for your own scholarship, and that should free another scholarship up somewhere. And then if we get to the point where we just start paying. Flat out just paying, and I think that is, me, that is literally the only way that this genie can get put back in the bottle, and that is this type of money that we're talking about right now. So why can't the players share in this $55 million? We can live off the same budget we lived off last year, give it a 5% intake, and then the rest should be split around. I mean, it should be. I mean, there's ways to do this, and everybody can be happy and good for everybody. But I'm sure that they'll screw it up, and
there's no way everybody will be happy anyway.
No,
that's not even with your proposal. There's going to be.
Yeah, I'm sitting there. I mean, you came in saying we might be dropping sports, and I didn't even have that in my head, and I'm sitting there going, I don't think that. But what you're saying about the SEC schools is that.
And I do think Penn State's one of them that are going to do everything that they can. Quite frankly, I think it's amazing, and whether you're critical or you love Sandy Barber or whatever, one of the more amazing accomplishments to me of her tenure is that she got this university through COVID with all of its varsity sports still intact.
Yeah.
That I'm telling you was no small achievement, and does speak volumes about the importance that Penn State does place on the varsity sports that currently exist.
Who dropped programs?
Oh, there were a bunch of schools.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there are definitely some who are still hurting. Like a lot of the talk about UCLA was that they kind of were made an offer they couldn't refuse because they were going to have to start hacking and slashing brutally. They were not dropped in their lap.
Big time.
Oh, by the way, imagine a scholarship at Stanford, UCLA, or USC versus a scholarship here with the cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
Like you talked about with Stanford and their assistant coaches. And I mean, imagine what those people are paying out there. They're off campus. We're complaining about a $2,000 a month off campus apartment. I mean, that's like $2,000 a person for. And there's 8 people in a room. The cost of living is so much more there. So there's a lot of things
week.
going. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into this. But I mean, I'm not going to complain about a $55 million, bonus or a raise we just got as the athletic program. Just don't go out and spend it like it's coming in. I mean, I know it's coming in for the next 7 years, but I just think that there's good ways to spend it and the bad ways. But I mean, we got to catch up on what we've lost. There's definitely revenue we have to catch up on because of COVID. If we operated a $20 million loss, is that what we figured out?
Was it?
I know
at least it was at least $20 million.
I know the university was definitely, because there's a hiring freeze at the university right now.
Yeah,
because they're not allowed to hire because they are at such a deficit because of the COVID stuff,
with various exceptions. But yes, there's always it's always in the fine print.
Oh, by the way, I did hear of one of the exceptions.
Yeah,
well, the offer was there before the freeze happened.
Yeah,
I don't know about that, but hey, it's that happens. That works.
Yep. So, one of the things I will be curious to see, too, with the new athletic director and this newfound money is whether or not there might be some reprioritization of the facilities, i.e., might Rec Hall at least get a little bit of a facelift with the restrooms, the concessions, the things that some people have been
you don't like the little league
for quite some time.
You don't like the little league ball field concession stand.
That money might be available now, so that you could possibly get something other than a overcooked hot dog and stale popcorn. Just a thought.
I've never thought about getting
for the 6,500 that have.
I know it's sacrilege, but has there been talk of just like replacing it? And
I
don't say. I mean, you know me. I'm as old school as you get.
I've never heard. I've never heard any discussion of that. I don't know that.
Do you remember
or not? But.
So I think this predates Sandy Barber. So this was probably the brief, eventful David Joyner era in the athletic department. But there was they were starting to talk facilities all the way back then. Do you remember there was some talk about a new multi-use facility that could go out? I think they talked about it maybe where the visitors center is, or right around in that area.
Well, there was talk at one time about the hockey. Yeah, that could be. That's vaguely ringing a bell. I know they were talking about building the hockey arena down, off of Blue Course Drive there on the other side of the golf course.
Interesting.
At one point.
But this was just kind of similar to what Nebraska has, which is more seating than Rec Hall, but less than the Bryce Jordan Center.
Yeah.
And volleyball, wrestling could go in there. Potentially even basketball might play there. They talked about, I mean, it never really went too far. But yeah, I think people have flirted with that idea, but Rec Hall's there.
I will say that one of the challenges that I don't know really how you get around with Rec Hall, and it is a challenge, with the wrestling community in particular, although I think all of those sports tend to have a little older population, the parking and the walk there in the wintertime is is you're not being kind to your fans.
I love the parking at Rec Hall. It's awesome.
And I do think
6 spots by the Lion.
Yes, getting an arena where you actually would have, parking similar to what you have at the Jordan Center. Obviously, you don't need as many places, but I mean, where you can park right around, and it's at least a little easier access, a much shorter walk, and you're not having to worry about, quite the amount of traffic and all of that trying to get across the street at the time of a particular event.
You will get out of
helpful.
Beaver Stadium with 110,000 people there faster than you will get out of the parking deck at Nittany after a Penn State wrestling match.
This is very true.
You bring a hibachi to sit up there waiting for 45 minutes, cook some hot dogs while you're waiting for the line to go down. Oh, that's unbelievable. I mean, I wonder if
you could leave your car running and cook them on the engine block because
No
the
doubt.
car would not move. The line would not move.
the hood's up. It doesn't matter because you don't need to see because you're not moving. You're in park. Oh man. We're sitting here giving the. Go back to from the start. Hell of a job. Good job, Big Ten. Hell of a job making all this money. Now put it in comparison to the SEC making a $300 million deal, and we just did a $1 billion deal.
I was blown away when they
it.
announced the SEC deal. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I can't believe they settled for that. And now it gives the Big Ten a huge advantage.
Absolutely.
Because they're the last prettiest girl at the dance.
Yeah.
And they can use that to leverage, they're already the Big Ten already had some advantages over the SEC. But there was nowhere else to go. I was really, really surprised when the SEC signed that media deal because they're usually pretty savvy, and I thought that was a bit of a misstep.
You're the one who said it to me. I said it was $300 million, and you said, look at what the Big Ten is being. They're being offered $900 million.
Yeah.
That is the power of the Big Ten brand.
Mm-hmm.
Then you bring in a UCLA and a USC, and that's worth another $100 million.
Yeah.
That market alone is
Well,
worth $100 million.
Yes.
And
And
open-ended for more when more teams come in. And I think that it was talked about that it is going to happen.
yeah, I will say part of this is, and I haven't sat down and broken down all the numbers. Obviously, the folks in the Big Ten and the various schools have, but again, it's a whole lot of money no matter how you look at it. But let's not forget now that you are, USC and UCLA are having to travel across the country for conference games now.
That's a good point.
Penn State and all these schools are also going to have to travel for their sports, at least once every couple of years type of deal. And listen, if the expansion goes the way I think most of us are expecting, which is, somewhere in the South, Southeast, ACC country to, Florida, I would be shocked if there isn't at least a Florida school that comes aboard the Big Ten here within the next.
You've been selling that hard, Ironhead. You've been very much selling that.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to not do it. And again, and it may be multiple school. I mean, it may be a USC, UCLA type of deal where you bring in Miami and Florida State or Central Florida, and and listen, there's other I think as this thing continues to emerge, you're going to see some different. Jacksonville State's a program that I think it's just going to be interesting to watch what does or doesn't happen here as, again, things evolve. Central Florida, we've talked about it with their alumni base. I mean, they could become, I think, a much bigger player in the overall scheme of things, especially if they join forces with a Big Ten or an SEC and kind of make that all-in commitment to, quote-unquote, being big time with their athletics. So, and there's a bunch of schools that are in. I picked those two out, but I mean, there's other schools that I think are going to be weighing heavily whether or not that's something that they can and should do to get in on this. And I think you're going to have other schools saying,
Talk to me here.
This is not the direction we want to be headed.
Do you think that they come, and you know who they is? That being Notre Dame.
Yeah, I don't know, because their TV deal, I am stunned with the numbers being thrown around for that.
$65 million.
That TV deal for their program, because to me, and I mean, I haven't sat down and looked at the numbers. Notre Dame doesn't feel as marketable as it once was. Still a big brand. I mean, it's still the biggest brand.
They're the biggest chip out there.
But I mean, I don't think Notre Dame, like in the 80s when I was a kid and following, like that Notre Dame Penn State game was as big as it got. And I mean, Penn State was playing Nebraska and Alabama. I mean, and they were all, but Notre Dame was like extra special. And I don't know that Penn State Notre Dame would still be huge, right? But I don't know, would it be really any bigger than Penn State Ohio State, or Penn State
to Ohio State? No, because Ohio State
that's what I mean. But
in terms of audience draw, maybe only for the novelty of it.
Yeah,
right.
Booch, give the number.
Well, yeah, right now it might be.
So what does Notre Dame get right now? They get $65 million TV deal from NBC.
So what they're talking about is, I think, $60 million per year from Notre Dame or from NBC, and then they get a little bit. I think it's like $12 to $15 million from the ACC for all their Olympic sports, non-hockey Olympic sports.
Yeah,
so they're going to forego $25 million, right? And I say this every time we talk about Notre Dame: the pressure of that football team to do really, really well.
That is true.
There was up-teen million PSI bits of pressure on that football team to do well, because if they do bad, then they don't get any kind of any extra money. Whereas if we have a bad season, we're still going to get bowl money from the Big Ten.
Right.
Yeah, there is extra pressure there, because I was going to say that the thing with Notre Dame is if they get to but it's a big if they get to the college football playoffs, all of that money is going into their coffers. If Penn State goes there, it's getting divvied up 16 ways.
Right? 20? 25, 50, 10. I don't even know what it is.
No,
So they're foregoing $25 million just to say we're still Notre Dame, we're still independent. Mm-hmm. And then are you doing?
But they may be banking that they're getting that money back. Is what I'm saying, because if they get there once every, I'd have to sit down and do the math on this. But if they get there once every 5 years,
well, the extra money from the ACC is bowl money, probably.
No, it's part of their. It's because all their
other sports. Okay.
Yeah, all their other sports play. So it's part of their TV deal. Yep.
So they don't get any. They don't share any ACC bowl money, nor do they share their own bowl money.
Correct.
It's just risky on their point just to sit there and say we're Notre Dame, we're still independent, which is great, awesome, fantastic, but. My God,
they did not earn their.
A lot easier.
They come by their reputation.
This is exactly now. Boots jumps in right now.
They come by their reputation for being insufferable. Honestly,
welcome to Notre Dame Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Notre Dame Stadium. Welcome to Notre Dame Stadium. Hey, you know what? Stick your stadium up. You know what?
Yeah, man.
Shut your mouth.
Which is why many feel that Notre Dame is a great fit for the Big Ten.
Yeah, for sure. And look, the thing is, Jack Swarbrick, for whatever else you can say, like Notre Dame is it is a team I truly love to hate. They make a great villain.
They do.
And Jack Swarbrick he's their athletic director. He's a worthy adversary. That guy is one of the smartest guys in college sports.
Yeah.
And I think he understands the leverage that they have as by far, by tens of millions of dollars, the biggest uncommitted chip left on the table. And he knows it's them. He knows how important that snooty, appeal to independence is to their fans and alumni. And he understands that the Big Ten and SEC are locked in a cold war with each other over Notre Dame's independence.
Yep.
And they're Germany.
Yes.
They're Germany. There's East and West Germany right there.
Because the only way that Notre Dame could be muscled into joining a conference. I mean, maybe you could bribe them with money, but clearly like a $25 million difference isn't enough, at least not right now. So the only way you can make sure you got them in is if the SEC and Big Ten said, hey, guess what, guys? Pick one of us or you're out. No playoffs for
That's
you.
What you said.
But that will never happen because of the prisoner's dilemma between the Big Ten and the SEC, because they would both have to agree that they were going to do that, and they would never trust one another enough to not assume that the other was going to turn around.
I have a great
and
scenario.
break the deal. And just one final point on that.
Yep.
It benefits the SEC for Notre Dame to be independent, because if you ever force them into a choice, they'd pick the Big Ten because we could give them more money. So the SEC doesn't want to upset the status quo. They want Notre Dame to remain independent, and they have enough influence to make sure Notre Dame, as an independent, will continue to get access to the playoffs. So the only way they ever finally make the move is, if we pull the Krusty the Clown move and drive a dump truck full of money.
How many times have you been told this is your last opportunity? I mean, this should be the last opportunity. And I'm going to tell you this much right now. I will never do anything with the Big Ten ever again if they go in there and give Notre Dame special treatment. Give them a Texas type.
I don't think they can. Yeah, I don't either. But I also think that's part of the you could call it haughtiness, but I also think it's not a bad way to check it on reality. Because if Notre Dame's looking at it, and as great as the money is, and again, I don't know that they're not saying, listen, if we get to a major bowl game once out of every 5 years and get to the playoffs once out of every 5 years, like we more than make up for that money that we're now again, it's a risk.
Be holding to nobody.
And right.
And remember now that NBC can afford to offer that $60 million because they can mandate as part of the deal that they schedule some Big Ten games as part of their, so they go back to playing Michigan every year.
Yeah.
Maybe they get Michigan State back on the schedule. Some of those opponents they traditionally put on their schedule who
Purdue,
left.
Penn State.
Yeah, now they can go back and NBC can say, okay, you're gonna get guys, you can be independent, you can get your $60 million, but we're gonna squeeze a couple extra games out of you.
They got to get rid of the Merchant Marine Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, Air Force, Army, and Navy. Are they going to get rid of all those games?
No, they'll still play those games.
No. So here's the deal: every odd year, their SEC,
USC, that's another Big Ten school.
Yeah, screw that. That's not a freaking rivalry. That one pisses me off. Go play in the cold. USC, go play in the cold. We'll call it a rivalry. So Notre Dame can play in the SEC in odd years. Even years, they're Big Ten. Done deal. It's done.
I love it.
We figured it out right then and there.
But I do think part of it is, and I don't know that it's necessarily a big part of it, but I do think part of it is Notre Dame sitting there saying, wait a second, we're going to get the same slice of the pie that Rutgers is getting. We're going to get the same slice of the pie that Northwestern is getting. I don't think so. Now, at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it may. I mean, Texas is. I mean, you couldn't have had a better sweetheart deal than what they had worked out with the Big 12.
No, I don't know why they left.
But I think it was long-term security.
No doubt about it, because it was going down.
Right, and I think that they saw that and listened. There's there was something to be said. A lot of these we're big TV primetime game show viewers in our house. The Mad Turtle loves watching
every
those.
night. It's all that's on anymore.
And yeah, it is. And so many of them though are right. And it's what I mean. It is what gets the adrenaline going. And maybe Notre Dame, it's just they're adrenaline junkies. But it's do you take the safe, sure thing, which is substantial, or heck no, no worries. Let's keep it rolling.
You could have $100 million, or what's inside this box.
So many times though, the people end up with zero, right? I mean, every now and then it works out and they get the million, but much more often than not, it's just like anybody in a casino, right?
The box.
Yes,
it's 2 Fiesta Bowl bids in a playoff spot.
The box.
Every now and then somebody hits, but there's a bunch of people that walk out of there, a couple $100 lighter, thousands of dollars lighter in the wall, whatever. And Notre Dame is, has
it's a 10-3 loss to Boston College in the Pinstripe Bowl.
You play Rutgers. No. At Rutgers. No, God, no. So just imagine the money.
The whammy got me again.
So
whammy always comes up in New Jersey.
Not just football, but there are other sports that have to travel to all the ACC schools. Imagine the money they would save playing in the Big Ten, and all their football, basketball, because they're going to fly anyway. They're going to fly in for an hour trip, and that's just how football
There's
is.
such an odd culture fit for the ACC too.
It was just an easier way for them to dictate. I mean, that's what it was. It was all about them dictating having the power.
Yeah, they did.
You don't think that Schwarbuck wants to go in and butt heads with Kevin Warren? There's no way in hell he wants that.
You sit down with Kevin Warren. You sit down with I'm blanking on the SEC commissioner's name.
Little Bo Peep.
Sure. You sit down with either one of those conferences, you're at the table with an equal. You go in, you're talking to the ACC. It's just like, guys, what do you want?
I'm ready to start this meeting. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's a measure wiener competition out there now.
The Notre Dame, I picture the Notre Dame meeting with the ACC.
It's beneficial for their other sports, in my opinion, to join the Big Ten.
Yeah,
absolutely,
sure.
It is, and they're just too damn cocky. And I'm telling you, if it's like, how many times do you have to say this is your last opportunity, and then 5 years later they'll say, okay, one more time, we're going to make a run at you. And they love it. They love the attention.
Don't you picture the meeting between the ACC and the Notre Dame? And Notre Dame is like that scene in Goodfellas where he's trying to get Paulie to buy into his restaurant.
Hey, you want to kill him? Yeah. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Oh. It's a power thing, and they would lose it in the Big Ten, I think. They would have equals, and they'd have to answer to people, But you're literally walking away from the $25 million. Jeff, you make a point in saying, okay, well, what are they making if they go to the slaughterhouse and play in the playoffs? I mean, what are they making? Are they making more money on their merchandise? I mean, that's what they do. I mean, every time they go in there, it's like, okay, where were you?
The Big Ten probably can't talk too loud about getting slaughtered in the playoffs.
We got one team out there who does anything in it, but Michigan can go out there. They could talk about being there and then talk about how they won. They beat Ohio State that year. You lost by 90 points to Georgia, but hey, we beat Ohio State that year for the first time in 11 years, and that's all they talk about. So
let me throw another interesting idea out to you guys that I've heard some talk about now, because as the dust is settling on this thing, we know for sure there's going to be this East Coast or West Coast element with USC, UCLA.
Yep.
Maybe there's some wiggle room in there for more expansion. Do they pick off a couple of more Pac-12 teams?
Yes.
It's really interesting. There's so much smoke out there. Some people will tell you that it's imminent, that Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, like they're coming.
Yeah.
Other people will say that USC and UCLA don't want any other West Coast teams.
Yeah.
They have to, because they have to come east 4 times a year. They do not want to do that.
$1 billion a year, I mean, pays for a lot. And so that was going to be the thing I brought up. I've heard a really interesting idea that there is already conversation inside the Big Ten that there are going to be satellite campus locations for the Western teams somewhere in the Mid-Atlantic area, and for the East Coast teams and the Central Time Zone teams.
I heard this. They're going to have USC in Western Nebraska.
But like that, there would
I go to UCLA, but it's in Nebraska.
There would be like some remote classroom facilities.
Oh.
There would be some practice fields and like workout facility. And so when you're making the transcontinental trip, there's a place where your team can basically take their classes, work out, be out on the West Coast, especially if they add a couple more schools. And then that also becomes a place that facilitates marketing your schools, collaboration on like research where you got your West Coast guys.
Who owns these satellites? Is it the Big Ten or the USC?
Yeah, the Big Ten operates them on behalf of all the member institutions.
So I'll go. Give me the scenario here. So I remember we played at USC in 1991, my freshman year. I didn't travel, but they left Thursday. So according to your scenario, we left Thursday because you don't want to get caught up in the clock change.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for them too.
In this scenario,
so they're
Monday night or Tuesday morning, and you're out there all week. You're taking your classes remotely.
Sitting there saying the whole week.
Yeah. Same thing for USC. They come east. They're here the whole week. They're remotely taking their classes. They're working out in the facility, and that's how they manage the cross-continental travel.
Do you think that the Big Ten teams in the Midwest even need that, or no? This is more for Penn State, Rutgers,
for the
Maryland,
for the coastal schools. Yeah.
What about that?
You thought it was crazy that we had a campus in Altoona. We're going to have one in, Kentucky.
I thought you were like sitting there saying like somebody goes to Ohio or somebody goes to USC is going to go to school in Western Nebraska for the whole year.
No,
that's not what I signed up for.
No, not like that.
I thought that's what you were saying.
Look, they've already sent everybody to school remotely for a year, so it's not crazy to. And to the point about the Olympic sports,
you can Zoom all. You don't have to have classrooms. You just Zoom them from your hotel room.
You could just say we're going to switch off years, and your Olympic sports are going to do all their travel in 1 year, and they're going to be home to all the West Coast schools. And whoever is traveling, you're going to take 2-3 weeks, and you're going to be at the remote campus facility.
Ironhead from Western Nebraska zooms in for the radio show.
Listen,
can you imagine a few schools at the remote facilities at the same time?
No, that's what I'm sitting there saying. I know what's going to happen. You better have a bar restaurant out there, and there's going to be fight. It's going to be like Necessary Roughness when the two football teams are fighting in the bar.
There'd be fighting and some Olympic Village stuff going on too, probably.
Listen, this makes perfect sense, but not.
Scores. I didn't say that.
It does not make as much sense as getting Hawaii into the Big Ten.
Hawaii,
and then doing this, and I think you start with the experiment of wrestling, and you send the Penn State because it's the biggest name in wrestling right now. Mm-hmm. You send Penn State out to Hawaii in this campus, and I would test it for a full month and make sure everything's operational and procedurally correct.
You would want to make sure all the broadcast apparatus was working.
You got to make sure communications can get back to the mainland, and I think it might be worth doing a 2-month.
I'll set up a radio show out there where we could get a bar.
Yeah,
I'll stake out some bars and good opportunities for us to do our show.
This just makes good common sense.
Jeff, you're working out there. I mean, I got to take care of the business.
Be working my tail off out there.
Wow.
Luau begins at 5.
The Nittany Luau's. Holy heck.
Well, it's a lot of money out there.
No, so, Jeff, we were talking also before the show because Booch asked for a Pepsi and said, we're just a good Penn State team. And then he asked me about my history, and I said, well, I was here when Penn State and Joe had the Coke breaks.
Yeah.
So, have you heard?
That's why people don't know. That's why Joe had the Coke bottle glasses. A lot of people don't know.
It was sponsored. So, have you heard anything about the new deal? Has that come up? Have we? About 6 months ago, you remember that Penn State hadn't re-upped the deal with Pepsi. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, surprisingly, I guess RC is going to be making a comeback, and Penn State
I thought Joe Cola was going to make a comeback. So Booch said all the Pepsi signs are still up at the stadium, so he goes, I don't know.
Pepsi signs are still up at the stadium, and on media day, all the Pepsi stuff that, clearly would have not just been like left there, but they had control over. There was still Pepsi stuff, so I'm assuming that deal got renewed or rolled over or whatever.
Interesting.
Sorry, I mean I don't drink a lot of soda. I'm kind of a Coke guy though.
So why is Kevin Warren another ADD issue?
But this
right
Pepsi
now.
Was very delicious.
So why? Yes, that's true. Hollidaysburg, by the way, the Little League team plays tonight at 7:00. So
awesome.
They're 45 minutes from here. So, I mean, I mentioned why the Big Ten should buy some airliners, some jets, and fly their own teams around. Can you imagine what they would save?
Big Ten Airlines.
Absolutely. Just buy a fleet.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good sponsorship opportunity. Where's Boeing at?
Sponsorship opportunity.
Boeing is a
Big Ten Airlines.
Oh, my good. Oh, in the off season?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How'd you guys get out here? Oh, the Big Ten was great. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Opportunities abound. Kids.
You know what we would be, by the way? There'd be Bo class and Woody class, and there'd be the Penn State classes in the dumper. You know that. You know that's how we get the short end of the stick there.
Yep.
Shenanigans. Well, boys, have a good weekend, man.
Make it a little easier to get to that first conference game of the season.
Fly to Hawaii first class in Bo and Woody style. That'd be great.
That is going to do it for today's program as we cash in on yet another show. We'll be back on Tuesday. Until then, be good and be safe.
Go Phillies.
Make more good in the all-new Sportage X Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event